Welcome to the Mom Needs a Moment podcast. We're your hosts, Chrissy
and Cindy,
co-founders of HER Health Collective.
We are two moms obsessed with revolutionizing the way moms take care of themselves. We are so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
HER Health Collective hosts 4 roundtables each year in an effort to bring together our experts and dive deep into topics that matter to moms the most. We have found that these roundtables are often our most well-liked and well-received episodes. Each of the experts in our roundtables have different professional backgrounds and specialties. And when they come together to discuss women's health or topics like what we're speaking about today, you can expect to get different perspectives based on their area of focus. This is also a time for our experts to collaborate with professionals from other industries in order to create a more holistic model of care for women. Our goal is to expand collaborative healthcare for women. In our roundtable today, we are discussing the topics of oppression, bias, inclusivity, and becoming allies. As parents, it is up to us to begin to have these conversations with our children in order to break the patterns of historic and ongoing oppression. Today, we are honored to be joined by several of our 2023 HER expert panelists. We are going to take a few moments to let each of them briefly introduce themselves and share their area of expertise so that our listeners who cannot see these wonderful, beautiful faces can hear each of our experts' voices and hopefully have a better idea of who is speaking during the upcoming conversation.
I'm Erin Bowdy. I have a background in human development and behavior change and organizational psychology, and I use a framework of personality to help make identity-related behavior change and habits for female entrepreneurs.
I am Dr. Sharice Johnson. I'm a licensed clinical therapist in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm the founder of Jade Integrative Counseling, an integrative practice where we see individuals, couples, and families from ages 13 and above. I'm also an author and a speaker and an OG here at HER Health Collective. So I am so excited to be here.
We love our OG, Dr. Sharice.
I'm Latasha Rout, and I am here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I am the owner of Birth Sisters Doula Services, where I care for pregnant women and their families as they prepare for a birth and in the postpartum. I have also been working with healthcare systems on quality improvement. So we do have a lot of the talk around bias and how that impacts healthcare. So I will be offering some of that today for sure.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Jessica Shields. I am here in Southern California, bright and early. I am the founder and CEO of Stronger Minds, Stronger Youth, and I am a licensed educational psychologist and a school psychologist. And I work to help parents build their child's confidence and also navigate complex systems in the education system. So again, a lot of bias when we talk about education and teaching and learning and looking at those disparities. So I'll be able to share about that today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maris Feely. I'm a co-owner of Carolina Birth and Wellness, which is a holistic resource center supporting families at every step of their reproductive healthcare journeys. So we cover everything from fertility to birth, postpartum, parenting. I'm also myself a practicing full spectrum doula, supporting families at kind of any and all of those steps. So definitely looking forward to today's issue and the way that this weaves through, the entire reproductive healthcare experience.
Hi, my name is Kirsten, and I am the owner of the Perinatal Pelvis in Hillsborough, North Carolina, where I provide pelvic floor therapy and maternal wellness. And I work to help women feel strong, confident, and functional in their bodies while receiving holistic and compassionate care.
Thanks, Kirsten. Well, HER Health Collective is not known to shy away from difficult conversations. We like to bring it to our community straight, and this is no different. Today is a difficult topic to talk about. We will be tackling unknown biases and talking about being an inclusive family of allies in a country with historic and ongoing oppression. Oppression is often defined as the social act of placing severe restrictions on an individual, group, or institution. This often causes prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment or control, and is a combination of prejudice and institutional power. In an article from the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is titled Social Identities and Systems of Oppression, it states, quote, "We are all assigned multiple social identities, whether we are aware of it or not. Within each category, there is a hierarchy, a social status with dominant and non-dominant groups. A person of the non-dominant group can experience oppression in the form of limitations, disadvantages, or disapproval." The article goes on to say, in the United States, systems of oppression, like systemic racism, are woven into the very foundation of American culture, society, and laws. Other examples of systems of oppression are sexism, heterosexism, ableism, classism, ageism, and anti-Semitism. Even though this is a difficult topic, it is important to have open discussions in order to develop a deeper understanding of the issues and dismantle the systems of oppression. How are you seeing historical oppression being reflected in the industry that you are in?
In my industry of maternal child health, I see it in the hospitals where if I run into a person of color that's working there, they really do have a hard time getting their point across. The people who I work with, who are mostly women of color, have a really hard time being seen and heard. And I think that is something that has persisted and probably will persist for a while in healthcare.
Latasha, have you seen it influence your mission of what you strive to do with your work?
It can. I try to safeguard against it as much as I can with prep work and helping people understand what the stats are and the disparities, helping people understand that sometimes you need to actually do some research on your own. You can't rely fully on every word. You have to understand healthcare for yourself and for your situation.
And I would have to say it's pretty clear in the field of education. We can pull up numbers right now across the nation. We can look at the disparities between achievement, just achievement alone. We can look at achievement for children of color, English language learners, compared to white and Asian counterparts even. And we can already see those disparities. We can see the disparities in discipline rates, and I always tell people, I say, you know what? The Black population is number one in all the bad statistics, because you can pull it up and you can see. And in my industry, it's hard getting that point across that it's not the child, it's the system that is set up to have these disparities. It's the systems, it's the resistance to change for education. Some people don't want to deal with their own bias. Some people would rather just teach the way they've been teaching, do the things that they have been doing and not change at all, because they're okay, they're doing fine. But the change is the hard part. And then really just looking at yourself and how you're practicing is where I see that resistance. And there is a lot of resistance. And again, we have the numbers to prove that something else needs to happen. But the underlying piece is the bias, is the racism, is how we're doing business in schools.
Now, Jessica, being in the educational system, has it shaped your approach to how you are doing your work and your choice of entry into the field that you're in?
Well, as a person who does work in schools, definitely it shapes everything that I do. I do a lot of assessments for special education, talk about ableism, talk about looking at a child's label and a teacher already making assumptions and already treating that child as if they can't do something because they see a label. And sometimes the labels aren't true. So, just having that bias instantly. So what I do is, because I do a lot of assessments and I get a lot of referrals often of English language learners, I have to be careful with the assessments that I choose. I have to make sure that I'm choosing assessments that are going to not be so language loaded, so culturally loaded, so that I can get the best out of that child. And if they're not disabled, then I'm not going to, label them disabled. It could be language acquisition. So I have to be extra careful about the tools that I choose. And it definitely shapes everything that I do and how I help parents navigate the school systems as well.
I also see an element of all of those things in the mental health field, right? When it comes to much of what Latasha and Jessica were talking about, and others can probably resonate with, the biggest overtone of historical oppression has been judgment, has been labeling, which allows for your denied full participation. So because this is who the world believes you are, or this is who the system that you're in believes you are, we're going to pull you out of here and we're going to do X, Y, Z. Yes, there are certain times and situations where that may be beneficial, but it also creates and adds to children, young adults feeling othered. And it adds to people going, well, I don't want to let someone know that something's wrong with me because I don't want to be seen that way. And as a result, in mental health, I believe people then minimize or dismiss or not want to change and address the things that would be helpful to them, but also because it hasn't been taught to them in the right way. I am a former educator, and I remember one of the things that I would constantly see as I was working with families around fourth or fifth grade was students would come to me labeled as oppositionally defiant. Whereas now that I'm in the mental health field, I can look back and go, they were experiencing adversive childhood experiences and impacted by trauma. And as a result, didn't have the developmental skills to know how to self-regulate when they were in an environment that was dysregulated and their parents weren't getting that information. And a lot of these various systems don't work together. So we kind of symptom check and label a child this way. And then once you get under that label, it creates a domino for a lot of people that you begin to identify. If this is what people believe about me, why try? So it definitely resonates how I want to, or has definitely impacted the way I want to show up in the mental health field, which is why I get out of my office and I do a lot of work in the community with school systems, with universities, at news stations, anywhere that's open. I want to bridge that gap so that we can know about the resources and help people understand that there's always a bigger picture than that one behavior that you see that is now kind of a weight on the person who it's being projected towards.
And I think a lot of times people don't know what they don't know. Racism is like air. We breathe it, we experience it, but we don't know it's there all the time. I think it's important for people to be exposed and to hear some of the experiences that people are having and also be educated on what bias is. And typically when you say bias, people think about the person who's screaming the N-word at someone or someone who's, blatantly displaying racism. But a lot of times it's very subtle. It is how people are seen in that moment, the judgment that happens, and it's those little moments that matter the most. They really do shape how people experience things and the care that they get. So I want people to recognize that while we talk about bias, we're not talking about the type that, anybody could see. We're talking about those moments when you decide that a resource is not going to be given to someone because they may not be able to afford it because they're Black. Like all of those things go together for people sometimes. We're talking about when people decide that it's not worth it to go the extra mile for someone because they're of a certain color, right? They don't always know they're doing it. They don't know they're always doing it. So another thing for people to think about is always have a way to make sure someone else understands what's happening. So for me, I always tell people, when you go to your doctor's appointments, you go with someone. If you can't take someone, take your phone and have it on speaker. Let someone else hear it, because in your upset, you may even miss some of it and not recognize, oh, wow, I didn't even know it happened that way. I didn't even recognize it in the moment. And then somebody can help you navigate and recognize what's really going on.
And I want to say that Latasha brought up a good point. I did teach a class at the university for upcoming school psychologists, and it was a class based on culturally responsive basically assessments and bias, so looking at your own biases. And one thing that all the students had to do at the very beginning was take the Harvard Implicit Association test. That is a good start to uncover some of your unconscious bias, because Latasha just talked about that unconscious piece. Sometimes you don't even know that it's happening. And so I think it's so important that we work to even uncover some of the unconscious bias that we may have, all of us, whether it's based on race or based on ability level, whatever it may be. But that is a really good assessment to start with, and it's free, and it gives you a lot of good feedback.
Yes, to all of that. I think I also want to lift up, as a white doula and like birth worker in this field, that I think sometimes too, it's very easy for folks working to disrupt these institutions to also feel like we aren't supposed to do, or we're not really a part of that, right? And not having to examine that implicit bias. And also that, well, that racism was something that happened, right? Like, well, what does that have to do with me? I think a lot of white folks distance themselves from the history of white supremacy and the way that it's internalized within our fields. And I'll say, at least for like birth workers in this field, I would definitely point people to Dr. Dorothy Roberts' book, Killing the Black Body, which is a deep dive history into the way that reproductive health care in particular is rooted and founded in a lot of control, coercion, oppression, particularly of Black women in this country. And that as a white doula or white birth worker, anyone in this field, I think everyone, to your point, has internalized oppressions to examine. But I think I'll say for myself, and informing our perspective at Carolina Birth and Wellness, it's doing that work with us first and recognizing that it's all interconnected, right? Or Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw's theory of intersectionality, that all of these identities are in the room with us. And that to really support women and families and parents, it's not just about any of these one-off issues, right? It's not just about birth, or it's not just about postpartum, or, their children going into schools, but it's, reproductive justice. And to define that, it's, the right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, to have children, to not have children, to parent those children in safe and sustainable ways. And so fighting that internalized oppression and unlearning that and fighting that within these institutions really weaves through all of these issues and weaves through the schools that our children are in, or our OB appointments, or our prenatal care, or our mental health care. And so I think that's very much informing our mission, and something that I just want to really lift up for white folks in this field too, when it comes to unlearning and battling racial oppression.
Maris, have you seen it shape your approach to the way that you do your work? It sounds like you have started educating yourself more, but has it done anything for the way you practice being a doula, the way you run your business, your choice of entry into the field you're in?
I think to lift up really Latasha's points, right? A lot of it comes down to understanding how it looks and kind of insisting on witnessing and lifting up witnessing the way that this happens. And so that can look like everything from lifting up Black doulas or providers of color or folks in this field that have lived experience, whether it's racism or different abilities or ableism or class, centering the voices, I think, first and foremost, of lived experience. But then also, I think, to your point, of making sure, at least like as a practicing doula, that our patients or clients bearing witness to their experiences thus far, and also making sure that we are willing to unlearn, I would say, internal values of white supremacy in order to protect and empower patients as well. So an example of this, I loved having someone with you for OB appointments that you mentioned, Latasha. And I think another example I would say of in birth work, pain is very layered in identity. And I feel like I heard echoes of that in Dr. Johnson's words too, in the way that we are believing people in their experiences. And when it comes to labor and delivery, the reporting of pain is very layered and coded in medical racism. And so the way that we're taking pain seriously and ensuring that our patients have access to the support, the medicine, the care that they deserve and need based on what they are reporting, feeling in their bodies is, I would say, just like a really clear-cut example of how needing to have like an anti-racist lens and an informed lens going into this field or in this work. I think it's really easy for me to be like, well, I'm not an OB, I'm not a doctor, I don't have like the power in this scenario, but it's like I'm still coming into the room with white privilege and with internalized white supremacy, and where am I in the system and how am I disrupting that within myself and within the room.
To our Patreon supporters, thank you. We appreciate you so much. Our goal has always been for moms to know they're not alone in the tough and challenging phases of motherhood. We know Mama Needs a Moment provides this to our listeners.
We are thrilled with the growth of the podcast over the past 2 years. Last year, Spotify shared that Mama Needs a Moment was in the top 30% most followed podcasts, was heard in 9 countries, and had more content than 97% of other creators in the family category.
We have recently launched a Patreon account for Mama Needs a Moment. This is a great way for you to provide additional support to HER Health Collective.
We've set up 3 options for Patreon supporters, each with its very own perks, such as special events, discounts, and bonus content from each and every podcast guest that is available only to our Patreon supporters.
Will you become a Patreon supporter? It would mean the world to us.
We're going to move now into discussing the development of biases and how they've been passed down through generations. And we're also going to talk about the way biases continue to affect the people that you're working with. The article we cited earlier mentions that an effective way to begin having difficult conversations and move towards advancements that will break through oppression is by looking at and understanding how each of us has been socialized to play certain roles. There's a diagram made up of 3 arrows, 3 circles, and a core center. And we will be putting all of this in the show notes. So listeners, you'll have access to all that we're discussing. This is called the cycle of socialization, which describes how our biases, ideas, beliefs, and behaviors are developed. These biases, such as preferences in favor of certain people, groups, things, or against certain people, groups, or things, then reinforce the cycle of oppression. We are born without biases, but we all have them, and they've developed, and they are all part of humans. The ways we are affected by issues of oppression, the messages we receive from institutions and culture, as well as the choices we make, continue to maintain an oppressive system based upon power. Getting clear on our conscious and unconscious biases and how they are rooted in inaccurate information or reason and are potentially harmful is important. So let's talk now about the biases that exist within your industries. What are some common biases that you hear from the women that you treat? And are there specific biases associated within your professional field of expertise?
I'd love to jump in on this from a framework of identity and personality and behavior. We understand in personality psychology that a lot of the behaviors that we develop are protective out of childhood development. And so much of the tools that get created around assessing behavior or personality or identity are primarily focused through the lens of white, cisgendered, educated men. So these measurement tools, while held up by empirical science in some flimsy way, right, lack the depth of perspective that captures the human condition, and it misses trauma and oppression and gender and access and ability and disability and neurodivergence, and yet we hold them up, especially in academic and business and psychology industries, as the standard. And often these more nuanced tools or perspectives get filtered off because they can't follow this scientific rigor. And so I think that bias, I'm a PhD candidate, I love science, and also like it's, as Maris said, our work as a privileged body to disrupt that work and bring in more perspective and more voices. I see it wholeheartedly in my work. When people I use the Enneagram as a tool. When people want to understand their personality or their identity better, a lot of folks that I work with that don't fit into this, accessible body, this white male view, can't find themselves easily. And we've conditioned them to believe it's them and not the tool. Really questioning the tool becomes a more effective strategy.
Last night, I actually was able to be a part of the Below the Belt film in Chapel Hill. If you haven't heard about this, please go and watch it. But it follows 4 women that experience pelvic pain and endometriosis, their journeys through finding healthcare. So on average, it takes 10 years for somebody to get diagnosed with endometriosis. Money that's going towards research for a female-only diagnosis is very small compared to, for example, diabetes. It's like $1 billion going to research for that diagnosis, where it's the same prevalence. So 1 in every 9 women in the world experience endometriosis, and that's the same amount that experience diabetes. And so it just sheds light on how we don't look at women in the same way, and how then we add on taboo topics like painful periods and painful sex and these issues that are happening in high school and college age females that they just get discredited when they go and seek medical care. They get diagnosed with GI issues or it's something else, and it's never something that has to deal with them as their female body. It's a great awareness in terms of where those biases live, even through our healthcare system. And I see that in my practice a lot of people just searching for answers and not getting the answers that they really want, and therefore not getting the care that they need.
Well, thank you for participating in that film. I'm sure that was a way for you to help challenge and bring to light the negative and harmful biases within your clients and the country. So thank you for doing that.
I'll say in my field of being a doula, I find that a lot of people don't recognize that there are tools that people use to determine whether or not a person is favorable for a vaginal delivery. And they do some checks and they put the information into a calculator that anybody can Google. And when they put it in, there is, on some of them, there are questions of race. And if you put in the same stats and you change the race, the favorability changes. So baked into the tool, it says that you're not as likely to have a vaginal birth if you are Black. And you can clearly see it. And so understanding that it's not just the people, it's the tools, as were mentioned, that are being used. And those tools were created by people who are growing up in this society where the default is white. We're not the default. The default is white. The default is white. And so recognizing that, I think, is important, because people don't think that far. They don't know that it even exists, but it's impacting care every day.
Well, Tasha, how do we, like we had just talked about with Kirsten, how do we challenge the negative or harmful biases within our clients as well as within ourselves?
The test is helpful because a lot of people find out that they're not as inclusive as they thought they were when they take the test. Everyone needs to get out of their bubble, and it's easy to tell. So a lot of times I can hear people in conversations like this who are devoted to the cause, but let me see your Facebook page. Who are you talking to? Who's at your house? Who's going on field trips? Who are your kids playing with? They look just like you. So we got to get to a place where we recognize that we need to have people intermingle. We got to get there. If we can't get there, it's just talk until we get there, right? I will say this also, as far as kids go, around 4 or 5, they start noticing, right? They know who's the cat and who's the mouse. You can't hide it from them. If you don't have the discussion, it starts there. So when you wait until they're teenagers to have this discussion, they've already digested so much information that tells them where they are on this totem pole and how people are to be treated on this totem pole, that is very difficult to make a dent. And they're carrying that all their lives. And I've had people say to me, how do I make sure my child's not racist? And I'm like, honey bun. How do you make it better? How do you make it better? Because they have been taught, they're reading the books, they're seeing the movies, they're, in an environment that says they are the default. That's a lot of privilege to hold. And so it takes conscious effort every day to help make that better, to help make them see things through a different lens, because they're getting fed it and they can't help it. They're in this environment. Like I said, it's the air. So it's a conscious effort. You have to really work at it for everybody, not just the kids, but I think it's very impactful when I see people not just do one training and know it all, not just read a book. You have to continuously feed yourself this diet of something different from what you're absorbing every day.
I have to agree with Latasha. She just brought up so many things that kind of triggered my memory. I think about what's going on in Florida. There's this ban against teaching Black history. Like, what is going on? And then I think about everything that you said, Latasha, and it reminds me of the book White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Great book. I highly recommend it. Now, if it's too much for you to swallow, then you already know you're not ready for change yet, because that is a tough book to read. And you have to be open to have that type of dialogue and to listen to someone else's perspective. So that's the first thing. But when you were talking, I was thinking about how we have so many barriers. If you think about anybody here, if you think about the books you read in 6th grade, 7th grade, maybe 8th grade, right? Maybe you read books like Where the Red Fern Grows, or you might have read The Outsiders, right? So those are the popular books. But think about in your own education, the books that were highlighted and chosen, whose story was being told? And if it was To Kill a Mockingbird, was that really a story that highlighted empowerment in the Black community? No, it did not. So if you think about even on that level, it's so subtle. The books that we even choose in the curriculum, whose story is being told, and then what is being considered the standard, and whose story is not being told. So even the subtleness of that can make an impact on how kids see themselves, how they see their peers who are not white, how they see the world. So all of that is a trickle effect.
Today's discussion was packed with vital takeaways. It was hard, but here are my top 3. 1, it doesn't matter whether we are talking about healthcare, education, or the mental health sphere. Bias is alive and well. It is woven into the fabric of our systems, from the tools we use for assessment and diagnosis to the types of resources and funding that are provided. Bias and oppression are pervasive and surrounds us every day, whether we are aware of it or not. Understanding oppression and bias is not a one-time deal. We can't just take a workshop, read a book, or listen to a podcast and be done with it. It must be a constant effort to learn, listen, and find ways to take action. 2, taking action can be hard. It can be difficult to know what to do to really make a difference. 3 suggestions I heard that really stood out to me were: first, look at your own inner circle. Who are you hanging out with? Who is in all of your photos on Facebook? How can you step outside of your comfort zone, meet new people, and expand your personal circle to individuals that look different from you? Second, look at what accounts you follow on social media. What types of books do you read and shows do you watch for pleasure? What types of stories are you exposing your children to? What can you do to diversify your entertainment sources? And third, if you see something, say something. If you're in a meeting and something is said or done that doesn't feel right, do something about it. Don't drop into someone's DMs afterwards to say, what happened was horrible and I didn't agree with it. Take a stand and let your views be known in the moment. 3, labels matter, particularly when it comes to our children. Once again, this applies across all the industries: healthcare, education, mental health. Explore what labels you walk through life with and the ways that impacts how you show up in the world. Take a moment to assess what labels you attribute to others and how that impacts the assumptions you make and the way you interact with them. Take the time to complete assessments like the Harvard Implicit Association test so you can identify the ways in which your own hidden biases may be showing up in your day-to-day life. Make a conscious effort to keep labels and preconceived notions from seeping into your daily conversations with your children. We hope you took as much away from today's conversation as we did. We are excited to bring you part 2 of this discussion next week, where we deep dive into becoming an ally and raising our children as allies.
High five, friend! We've enjoyed hanging out with you. Follow us so you're the first to know when we drop a new episode.
If you've enjoyed your time with us, let us know by leaving a review. We always love hearing from you. Until next time, stay true to you.